The jungle on Urkella never truly fell silent. Even in what passed for night on this distant world, the bioluminescent flora cast an eerie blue glow across the dense undergrowth, while magnetic storms rumbled overhead, sending ripples of charged particles dancing across the sky. The air tasted metallic, a mix of ozone and the strange spores released by fungi that clung to the massive tree trunks. In this alien paradise, Carrie bled. She pressed her three-fingered hand against the wound on her side, wincing as the sharp pain shot through her torso. The sticky purple fluid that served as Vera blood oozed between her fingers, its faint phosphorescent quality making her position all too visible in the darkness. She cursed under her breath, a harsh sound that matched the angry set of her jaw and the fierce gleam in her vertically slit pupils. The mine, planted by humans, she was certain, had caught her by surprise. Not enough to kill her, but enough to slow her down, separate her from her unit. Enough to make her vulnerable. Carrie shifted uncomfortably in the small rocky alcove where she'd taken shelter. Water dripped steadily from stalactites overhead, the rhythm almost mocking in its constancy, while her own heartbeats fluttered erratically with pain and rage. "Filthy humans," she hissed, the words emerging as much from habit as conviction. From her earliest memories in the training compounds of the Vera Dominion, Carrie had been taught that humans were the enemy, conniving, dangerous creatures who threatened everything the proud Vera race had built across the stars. She recalled her combat instructor's words with perfect clarity. They lack honor. They lack strength. What they possess is cunning and cruelty. Never turn your back on a human. Never show weakness. Yet here she was, weak and alone, her back literally against a wall. The sound came suddenly, a soft disturbance in the foliage outside her hiding place. Carrie froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the plasma pistol at her hip despite knowing its charge was nearly depleted. Her breathing slowed deliberately, her body falling into the hunting stillness that was her birthright as Vera. A shadow passed across the entrance to her alcove, too large to be local wildlife. The distinctive silhouette of a humanoid form, moving with cautious precision. Human. Specifically, a human scout by the looks of the lightweight combat gear and the way they moved, not the heavy tread of their infantry or the hurried pace of their medics. Scouts were dangerous, observant, resourceful, deadly at distance. Carrie's mind raced. She could attempt to remain hidden, but the trail of blood she'd left would be visible to anyone with decent night vision equipment. She could try to fight, but her injury put her at a severe disadvantage. She could attempt to flee deeper into the cave system, but that would only delay the inevitable. The human paused, adjusting something on his wrist display. Then, he turned directly toward her hiding spot. He had found her. Carrie raised her weapon, ignoring the burning pain that flared in her side with the sudden movement. "Don't come any closer," she warned, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertone of her species. The human stopped, his weapon half raised. In the blue glow of the forest, Carrie could make out his features. Dark hair cut short against his skull, a face weathered by combat, but not as hardened as she expected. His eyes, frustratingly, were hidden behind tactical goggles. "You're injured," he said simply. His voice lacked the expected, gloating tone. "Observant for a human," Carrie spat back. "Does that make killing me more satisfying?" The human tilted his head slightly, then slowly reached for something at his belt. Carrie tensed, finger tightening on her trigger. "Easy," he said. "I'm not drawing a weapon." What he pulled out instead was a small white box marked with a red symbol, a medical kit. He sat on the ground between them, then took a deliberate step back. "My name is Reyes, scout specialist with the Coalition Forces. And no, I don't want to kill you." Carrie stared at him, momentarily speechless. This was not how encounters between Vera and humans were supposed to go. There should be violence, hatred, the familiar dance of enemies. Not whatever this was. "I have bandages," Reyes continued, gesturing toward her wound. "That looks deep." Carrie's hand instinctively pressed harder against her side, as though she could hide her weakness. Images flashed through her mind, stories of humans capturing Vera soldiers, conducting experiments, extracting information through torture. She'd seen the recordings, the evidence of their cruelty. Yet exhaustion was setting in, along with the first worrying signs of blood loss. The wound wasn't immediately fatal, but without treatment. Reyes knelt slowly, opening the medical kit. "Your choice," he said, his voice calm. "But that wound won't fix itself." Carrie watched him, her pistol still trained on his chest, her eyes burning with suspicion and something else. A confusion that bordered on fear, not of him specifically, but of what his offer represented. Something that didn't fit with everything she knew. "Why would you help me?" she demanded. Reyes looked up, finally pushing his goggles onto his forehead. His eyes, surprisingly gentle, met hers. "Because you're bleeding," he said simply, "and I can stop it." The jungle seemed to hold its breath around them, waiting for her decision. Carrie felt her arm trembling, whether from weakness or emotion, she couldn't tell. Slowly, reluctantly, she lowered her weapon. "If you try anything," she began. "I won't," Reyes replied, and for reasons she couldn't explain, Carrie believed him. He approached cautiously, medical supplies in hand, while in Carrie's eyes, rage still smoldered, but now mixed with bewilderment and the faintest flicker of something entirely unfamiliar: curiosity. Reyes worked methodically, his movements efficient but gentle as he cleaned the wound on Carrie's side. The antiseptic stung, causing her to hiss involuntarily. "Sorry about that," he said, not looking up from his work. "Your physiology is different from ours, but infection is probably still a bad thing, right?" Carrie watched him warily. "The smell is unpleasant," she replied stiffly. "Most effective medicines are." Reyes paused, examining the wound more closely. "You're bleeding quite a bit. Do Vera have backup blood supplies tucked away somewhere?" The attempt at humor caught Carrie off guard. "Our circulatory system is more efficient than yours," she said tersely. "Don't touch me like that if you want to keep your hand." Reyes raised an eyebrow, but adjusted his approach. "Fair enough. Just trying to help." Silence fell between them as he continued working, applying pressure to stop the bleeding before preparing a bandage. Carrie studied him with growing confusion. His hands were steady, his focus absolute. There was none of the disgust or hatred she'd been taught to expect from humans when confronted with Vera physiology. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked suddenly. Reyes glanced up, meeting her eyes briefly. "You already asked that, and you didn't answer properly." He sighed, securing the bandage in place. "Look, out here, things aren't always as black and white as they tell us. I've been fighting this war for 3 years now. I've seen enough death." "Your coalition started this conflict," Carrie said reflexively, though without the usual venom. "Did we? That's not what we were told." Reyes sat back on his heels. The Dominion expanded into territories that had already established human settlements. "You attacked first." Carrie frowned. "That's a lie. Your kind has always been the aggressor. The experiments your scientists conducted on captured Vera." "What experiments?" Reyes looked genuinely confused. "The Dominion has been conducting forced genetic testing on prisoners of war. Everyone knows that." The certainty in his voice mirrored her own, creating an uncomfortable dissonance. Either one of them was being lied to, or both were. Before she could respond, a low humming sound penetrated the cave, the unmistakable engine signature of a Vera patrol craft. Carrie stiffened, her eyes darting toward the cave entrance. "Is that your ride?" Reyes asked, already gathering his medical supplies. "No," Carrie said quietly. "If they find me with you." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Fraternization with the enemy was punishable by death in the Dominion. Reyes understood immediately. "Same here. Coalition intelligence would have a field day with me before they decided whether to court-martial or just shoot me." He was on his feet now, weapon ready, but not pointed at her. "We need to move deeper." "We," Carrie repeated, incredulous. "There is no we, human. Can you walk on your own?" he challenged. Carrie attempted to stand, using the rock wall for support. Pain lanced through her side, and she nearly collapsed before steadying herself. Pride demanded she continue alone, but pragmatism whispered otherwise. "Fine," she conceded reluctantly. For now. The patrol craft's engines grew louder, then began to fade as it passed overhead. but they both knew it would likely circle back, scanning the area methodically. The Vera Dominion was nothing if not thorough. "This way," Reyes whispered, pointing toward a narrow passage at the back of the alcove. "I spotted what looks like an old tunnel system further in when I was scouting this sector. Might provide better cover." Carrie hesitated, then nodded once, sharply. Moving awkwardly together, they slipped deeper into the darkness, united temporarily by the greater danger that hunted them both. The tunnel system was old, far older than the conflict between their species. As they moved deeper, emergency lighting strips on Reyes' gear revealed markings on the walls that neither of them recognized, geometric patterns, interspersed with what might have been writing or merely decorative elements. "Not natural," Carrie observed, running her fingers over one of the symbols. "Definitely constructed," Reyes agreed. "But by whom?" The passage widened suddenly, opening into a large chamber that made them both stop short. Unlike the rough stone of the tunnels, this space was clearly manufactured, smooth metallic walls lined with what appeared to be control panels and display screens. Most were dark, but a few still flickered with faint power. "This isn't ancient," Reyes said quietly. "This is Veritech. Recent." Carrie moved forward, drawn to one of the still functioning displays. "It's a research facility," she said, her voice tight with surprise. "Dominion military designation. Abandoned, apparently." She tapped at the console, bringing up data scrolling in VeriScript. Her expression changed as she read, eyes widening. "This doesn't make sense." Reyes approached cautiously. "What is it?" Carrie stepped back from the console, her face a mask of shock. "Project Fokker," she said, the words coming out hollow. "A genetic modification initiative. They were experimenting with cross-species DNA splicing." "Cross-species? You mean?" "Vera and human," Carrie confirmed, her voice barely audible. "Among others." Reyes moved to another console, finding it still responsive. Unlike Carrie, he couldn't read the Vera text, but the diagrams were clear enough: genetic sequences, modified cell structures, experimental results with success and failure rates meticulously documented. "They were trying to create hybrid soldiers," he said, the realization dawning slowly, "taking the best attributes from each species." "That's impossible," Carrie insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "The Dominion would never. We are pure. Our genetic lineage is sacred." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Reyes said grimly, pointing to what appeared to be a progress report. "Look at the dates. This was active until very recently." Carrie stared at the screen, then around the facility. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't we know about this?" "Same reason my people wouldn't know if the Coalition was doing something similar," Reyes replied. "Some things are kept from the rank and file." A sudden mechanical hum interrupted them. Across the chamber, a panel slid open, revealing what appeared to be a stasis pod. Lights activated around its perimeter, and a hissing sound indicated the seal was breaking. "Did you touch something?" Carrie demanded, backing away. "Nothing," Reyes assured her, raising his weapon instinctively. "The system must have detected our presence." The pod's transparent cover retracted, releasing a cloud of preservation mist. As it cleared, they could see the figure inside. Humanoid, slender, with features that combined aspects of both their species. The skin was pale, but with faint purple undertones, especially visible at joints and extremities. The ears were slightly pointed like a Vera's but smaller, and the eyes, now blinking open, had vertical pupils but with irises that were remarkably human in their expressiveness. On the neck, clearly visible, was a brand, the military insignia of the Vera Dominion. "Is that?" Reyes began. "A hybrid," Carrie finished, her voice a mix of horror and fascination. "They actually did it." The being sat up slowly, movements tentative as though unused to its own body. No. Carrie corrected herself mentally. They appear to be adolescent in development, neither child nor adult. Their eyes focused first on Carrie, recognition flickering briefly, then shifted to Reyes with visible apprehension. "Hello," Reyes said cautiously, lowering his weapon. "Can you understand us?" The hybrid's gaze darted between them. Then, surprisingly, they nodded. "Do you have a name?" Carrie asked, taking a hesitant step forward. The hybrid's mouth moved, forming words with obvious effort. Ares. They finally managed, the voice neither distinctly male nor female, carrying both human inflections and the harmonic undertones of Vera's speech. Ares, Reyes repeated, like the god of war. Carrie shot him a questioning look. Human mythology, he explained briefly. Not important right now. Ares was examining their surroundings with growing awareness, recognition dawning in those strange eyes. The facility, they said, each word coming more easily than the last. You come to take me back. No, Carrie said quickly, surprising herself with the vehemence of her denial. We just found this place. You were the insignia, Ares noted, pointing to Carrie's uniform. I'm Dominion military, yes, but I didn't know about. She gestured helplessly around the room, at the evidence of ethical boundaries crossed. About any of this. Ares studied her, then Reyes. Human, they stated simply. Yes, Reyes confirmed, but not here to harm you. A sudden alarm blared from the console, causing all three to flinch. Red text flashed across. The screen's proximity alert. The stasis pod's activation had triggered a signal. Someone's coming. Reyes translated unnecessarily. Carrie moved to the console, trying to disable the alarm. It's too late. The signal's already been sent. She looked up, meeting Reyes' eyes with surprising directness. Dominion forces will be here soon. They'll be coming to recover their project. Me, Ares said quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the continuing alarm. Carrie found herself at a crossroads more significant than any battlefield decision she'd ever faced. Everything she'd been taught demanded she secure Ares for the Dominion, capture or kill the human, and report back to her superiors. But the existence of this facility, of Ares themselves, contradicted fundamental beliefs she'd held about her people. Reyes seemed to be having a similar internal struggle. Finally, he spoke. We need to get out of here. All of us. And go where? Carrie demanded. Anywhere but here, he replied grimly. Unless you're eager to explain to your superiors why you were cooperating with the enemy instead of killing me on sight. Carrie looked at Ares, who watched their exchange with unsettling intensity. What about them? What about me? Ares asked, sliding fully out of the pod to stand on unsteady legs. I am property, an experiment. That is all I have ever been. Something in those words struck Carrie deeply. She thought of her own life, born and bred for combat, valued only for her utility to the Dominion. Was she so different? No, she decided aloud. You're not property. You're a person. And we're leaving. Reyes nodded his agreement, a hint of respect in his eyes. There should be another way out. These facilities always have emergency exits. This way, Ares said suddenly, pointing toward a corridor opposite from where Carrie and Reyes had entered. Maintenance shaft. It leads to the surface. How do you know that? Carrie asked. I was born here, Ares replied simply. I know every centimeter of this prison. With no time to waste on further questions, they hurried toward the indicated passage, Carrie wincing as her wound protested the sudden movement. Behind them, the alarm continued its ominous wail, counting down the moments until discovery. They had barely made it halfway down the maintenance shaft when the first sounds of pursuit reached them. The clatter of Dominion military boots, orders being shouted in the distinctive clipped tones of senior officers. Faster, Reyes urged, supporting Ares who still moved awkwardly after their long stasis. Carrie took the lead, ignoring the pain that threatened to overwhelm her with each step. The passage began to slope upward, and she could feel fresher air flowing down toward them. They were nearing an exit. Stop right there. The command echoed down the tunnel behind them, followed by the distinctive whine of plasma weapons powering up. Carrie risked a glance back. A squad of Dominion soldiers had entered the maintenance shaft, led by a figure she recognized immediately despite the distance. The tall, imposing form of Chancellor Sojin, military overseer for this sector. His presence confirmed the importance of whatever project Fokker truly was. Keep going, she hissed to Reyes and Ares. I'll hold them off. With what? Reyes demanded. Your pistol's nearly dead, and you can barely stand. Before she could argue, Ares stepped between them, eyes fixed on the approaching soldiers. Then, something extraordinary happened. The hybrid's body seemed to vibrate, and the lights in the tunnel flickered violently. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward, causing the Dominion weapons to sputter and die. Now, Ares gasped, clearly drained by the effort. We must go now. Not questioning their sudden advantage, they scrambled up the remaining length of the tunnel until they burst out into the Orkellan jungle. Night had fully fallen, and the bioluminescent forest glowed around them like a sea of stars. This way, Reyes said, quickly orienting himself. There's an abandoned outpost about 2 kilometers north. We can regroup there. They fled through the undergrowth, the sounds of pursuit fading temporarily as the Dominion forces regrouped from Ares' unexpected attack. The jungle seemed to close around them protectively, dense foliage concealing their passage while the constant magnetic storms overhead interfered with scanning technology. By the time they reached the outpost, little more than a prefabricated bunker half reclaimed by the jungle, Carrie was barely conscious, her bandage soaked through with fresh blood. Reyes helped her inside, while Ares secured the entrance as best they could. Let me see, Reyes said, carefully lowering Carrie onto a dusty bunk. She didn't resist as he removed the blood-soaked bandage, too exhausted to maintain her earlier hostility. Bad, she asked weakly. You'll live, he assured her, though his expression was grim as. He applied a fresh dressing from his dwindling supplies. But you've lost a lot of blood. You need rest. Carrie wanted to argue, to insist they keep moving, but her body betrayed her. As Reyes worked, she found herself studying his face, the concentration in his eyes, the careful precision of his movements. There was no disgust as he touched her alien skin, no hesitation in helping her despite everything their people had taught them about each other. Why are you fighting this war, Reyes? She asked suddenly, the question emerging from some deep, hidden part of her. He paused, seeming surprised by the inquiry. Because I was ordered to, he said finally. Because I was told the Vero were a threat to human existence. He secured the bandage and sat back. Why are you? For the glory of the Dominion, Carrie recited automatically, then frowned. For the purity of our species. The words tasted bitter now, knowing what she discovered about Project Fokker. At least, that's what I believed. Ares, who had been silently monitoring the perimeter, joined them. They lied to you both, they said simply. Humans and Vera, your leaders. They create enemies to justify power. That's a bit simplistic, Reyes began, but Carrie interrupted. No, she said quietly. I think Ares might be right. She gestured to her bandaged wound. Look at this. You treated me, not as an enemy, but as a person who was hurt. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to help Ares escape, Reyes countered. But you did. They fell silent, the implications of their choices weighing heavily in the cramped space of the bunker. Outside, a Dominion patrol craft rumbled overhead, its searchlights cutting through the canopy nearby. None of them spoke until the sound had faded into the distance. They won't give up, Carrie said finally. Not with Ares. Whatever Project Fokker is, it's clearly important enough for Chancellor Sojin himself to be involved. We need to get off planet, Reyes concluded. None of us will be safe here. Ow! Carrie demanded. The spaceport is controlled by Dominion forces, and even if we reached it, I'm a deserter now, and you're... She trailed off. The enemy, Reyes suggested with a wry smile. A complication, Carrie amended, surprising herself with the admission. The facility, Ares said suddenly. It has a launch pad. Emergency evacuation protocol. Both Carrie and Reyes turned to stare at the hybrid. Are you certain? Carrie asked. Ares nodded. I overheard discussions. Security protocols. The facility must be able to evacuate research subjects, specimens, they corrected bitterly, in case of discovery or attack. That could work, Reyes said thoughtfully, if we can get back in undetected. If, Carrie emphasized, the place will be crawling with Dominion forces by now. You know their protocols better than I do, Reyes pointed out. And Ares knows the facility. Carrie wanted to object, to point out all the ways the plan could fail, but found herself considering it seriously instead. What alternative did they have? Stay here and be captured eventually? Try to disappear into the jungle and hope to survive until, what, the war ended? It would need senior biometric authorization to activate, she said finally. I don't have that level of clearance. I might, Ares said quietly. They use my genetic material for security protocols. Testing responses. Carrie and Reyes exchanged a look. It was a long shot, but possibly their only one. We'll need to wait until dawn, Carrie decided. The magnetic storms are strongest then, which will help mask our approach. Reyes nodded. Try to rest. I'll take first watch. As he moved toward the entrance, Carrie found herself watching him. This human who had upended everything she thought she knew. He caught her gaze and held it for a moment, something unspoken passing between them before he turned away. Beside her, Ares curled up, exhaustion evident in every line of their body. Carrie felt a strange protectiveness toward this being. Neither human nor Vera, but somehow both. Without thinking, she reached out, awkwardly patting Ares' shoulder in what she hoped was a comforting gesture. Ares looked up, surprise evident in those strange eyes. Why do you help me? They asked, echoing the question Carrie had posed to Reyes earlier. Carrie considered the question, searching for an answer that made sense. Because you deserve better than to be someone's experiment, she said finally. We all do. Sleep claimed her soon after, her body's need for healing overwhelming her soldier's instinct to remain vigilant. Her last conscious thought was of Reyes' hands as he had bandaged her wound, gentle, careful, treating her like something that mattered. Dawn on Orkella came with a surge in the magnetic storms, just as Carrie had predicted. The sky rippled with energy, and the forest's bioluminescence gradually dimmed as the planet's distant sun began to assert itself. It was in this tumultuous transition that they made their move, slipping back toward the research facility through the dense undergrowth. Carrie felt stronger after rest, though her wound still throbbed with each movement. Reyes had redressed it at first light, his touch no less gentle than before. Ares led the way, moving with increasing confidence as their muscles remembered their purpose after the long stasis. They approached the facility from above, using a ventilation shaft that Ares recalled from their time inside. As expected, Dominion forces patrolled the perimeter, but the magnetic interference made their sensor equipment unreliable, creating gaps in their coverage. There, Carrie whispered, pointing to a momentary blind spot between two patrol routes. We have 30 seconds. They moved with synchronized precision, reaching the shaft entrance undetected. Ares went first, followed by Carrie, with Reyes bringing up the rear. The tight space forced them to crawl in single file, the metal surface cold against their palms. The control center will be heavily guarded, Carrie warned as they paused at a junction. That's where the launch controls are. We don't need to fight everyone, Reyes pointed out. Just get in, activate the launch sequence, and get to the pad. Simplified strategies rarely survive contact with reality, Carrie retorted, but without real heat. Sometimes simple is best, Reyes replied with a hint of a smile. Ares interrupted their exchange. This way, they said, pointing down a narrow side passage. Maintenance access. Less monitored. The hybrid's knowledge of the facility proved invaluable as they navigated the labyrinthine internal structure. Twice they froze as patrols passed beneath grates in the ventilation system, but each time they remained undetected. Finally, they reached an access panel that, according to Ares, would put them directly above the secondary control room, less heavily guarded than the main center, but with sufficient access to initiate the launch protocol. Ready? Reyes asked, checking his weapon. Carrie nodded, then surprised herself by extending her hand toward him. After a moment's hesitation, he took it, their fingers intertwining briefly, a silent acknowledgement of their unlikely alliance. For better outcomes, she said softly. For better outcomes, he echoed. With practiced ease, Reyes disabled the panel's security sensor and removed it silently. Peering down, they could see a small control room with only 2 Dominion technicians present. Carrie dropped down first, her combat training allowing her to land silently despite her injury. Before either technician could react, she had knocked one unconscious with a precision strike. Reyes followed immediately, subduing the second with equal efficiency. "Hurry," he urged as Ares descended last. "Someone will notice they're not responding soon." Ares moved to the main console, fingers hovering over the controls. "I need to access the evacuation protocol." Carrie joined them, scanning the familiar Dominion interface. "There," she pointed. "Emergency protocols are always isolated in a separate system. Security measure." Ares navigated to the indicated section, only to be met with a demand for authorization. A small scanner extended from the console, a DNA reader. "Will it work?" Reyes asked, tension evident in his voice. Ares placed their palm on the scanner without answering. For a moment, nothing happened, and Carrie felt her hope beginning to crumble. Then, the screen flashed green, and a new menu appeared. Launch preparation initiated. The system announced in the clipped tones of Dominion AI. "Evacuation vessel powering up. Departure in 15 minutes. "We did it," Reyes said, relief evident in his voice. "Not yet," Carrie cautioned. "We still need to reach the launch pad." As if summoned by her words, an alarm began to blare throughout the facility. On the screens above the console, they could see Dominion troops mobilizing, converging on their position. "Someone noticed our technician friends taking a nap," Reyes observed grimly. "The launch pad is 3 levels up," Ares said, already moving toward the door. "This way." They ran through the corridors, Carrie leading with her superior knowledge of Dominion military protocols, Ares guiding with their intimate familiarity of the facility layout, and Reyes covering their rear. Twice they encountered patrols, and twice they were forced to fight brief, violent encounters that left Dominion soldiers unconscious but not dead. As they reached the final ascent to the launch level, a commanding voice echoed through the corridor ahead. "That's far enough, Specialist Carrie." Chancellor Sojin stood at the top of the ramp, flanked by elite Dominion guards. Tall even for a Vera, with the distinctive silver markings of high military rank across his face, he projected an aura of absolute authority that had Carrie instinctively straightening despite herself. "Chancellor," she acknowledged, her voice steadier than she felt. Sojin's gaze moved from her to Reyes, contempt evident in his expression. "Consorting with the enemy. Stealing military property." His eyes settled on Ares. "Did you really think you would succeed?" "Ares isn't property," Carrie said firmly. "What you've done here, what the Dominion has done, is wrong." "Wrong." Sojin's laugh held no humor. "You speak of morality as though it applies to war. Project Fokker represents the future of the Vera race. Perfection through selective integration of desirable traits." "You mean corruption," Carrie countered. "Everything we were taught about genetic purity, it was all lies." "Not lies," Sojin corrected. "Simplifications for those who cannot comprehend the greater vision." He extended a hand toward Ares. "Come, Asset Ares, return to your purpose." To Carrie's shock, Ares took a step forward. "Ares, don't," Reyes urged quietly. The hybrid paused, looking between Sojin and their unlikely allies. "My purpose," they repeated, the words hollow. "You were created to serve the Dominion," Sojin affirmed. "It is your only value." Something shifted in Ares' expression, a hardening, a clarity. "No," they said, the single word carrying surprising force. "I was created, but my purpose is my own to define." Sojin's face contorted with rage. "Then you, like these traitors, have chosen extinction." He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Ares once again manifested the strange electromagnetic ability they had displayed in the tunnel. The lights flickered violently, and Sojin's guards stumbled as their equipment malfunctioned. "Now!" Ares shouted. Reyes didn't hesitate, launching himself at the nearest guard while Carrie engaged another. The confined space of the corridor worked to their advantage, preventing Sojin's forces from bringing their superior numbers to bear effectively. Carrie found herself face to face with Chancellor Sojin himself, his imposing height giving him reach advantage as he swung his ceremonial blade at her. She ducked, feeling the air displace above her head, then drove upward with a strike to his midsection. He grunted, but didn't fall, countering with a sweeping kick that she barely avoided. "You had such promise," Sojin snarled. "One of our finest warriors, reduced to this. A traitor defending a failed experiment and a human vermin." The words were meant to hurt, to remind her of her place in the Dominion hierarchy. Once they would have. Now, they only strengthened her resolve. "I'm defending people," she shot back, feinting left before scoring a hit on his right shoulder. "Which is more than you've ever done." Nearby, Reyes was holding his own against two guards, his human fighting style unpredictable enough to keep the more rigidly trained Vera soldiers off balance. Ares, meanwhile, had managed to access a terminal, their fingers flying across the interface. The launch sequence, Sojin realized, momentarily distracted from his fight with Carrie. Stop them. That split second of inattention was all Carrie needed. She drove forward, using her smaller size to slip inside his guard, and delivered a precise strike to a nerve cluster at the base of his throat, a Vera weak point rarely exposed to enemies. Sojin gasped, his body temporarily paralyzed by the blow, and crumpled to his knees. "I would kill you," Carrie said, standing over him, "but that would make me what you believe all soldiers should be, just weapons without conscience." She kicked his blade away. "I'm choosing something different." Launch sequence activated, announced the facility's automated system. Departure in 3 minutes. All personnel clear launch area. "We need to move," Reyes called, having dispatched the last of the guards with a well-placed stun blast. Not lethal, Carrie noted, another choice that defied what she'd been taught about humans. They ran for the launch pad, Ares leading the way through the final security checkpoint. Behind them, they could hear Sojin shouting orders, summoning reinforcements. The evacuation vessel was small, designed for transporting high-value assets rather than comfort, but it was fully fueled and ready for departure. Its sleek, angular design bore the unmistakable aesthetics of Vera military craft. "Can you fly this?" Reyes asked as they sealed the entry hatch behind them. "Basic piloting is part of standard Dominion training," Carrie confirmed, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her hands moved confidently over the controls, the familiar Vera interface responding instantly to her touch. "Departure in 1 minute," the system announced as the vessel hummed to life beneath them. "They're going to try to override the launch," Ares warned, monitoring the communications panel. "Security protocols. Let them try," Carrie said grimly, initiating the final launch sequence manually. "I'm bypassing the standard protocols." Outside, they could see Dominion troops flooding the launch area, plasma weapons at the ready. At Sojin's command, they opened fire on the vessel, but the reinforced hull absorbed the impacts with minimal damage. 30 seconds to launch, the system counted down. Reyes strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat, watching the approaching soldiers with tense anticipation. "Will the shields hold until we launch?" "They don't need to," Carrie replied, a fierce smile crossing her face as she activated the vessel's defensive countermeasures. A pulse of energy rippled outward, temporarily disabling the Dominion weapons and buying them precious seconds. 10, 9, 8. On the ground, Carrie could see Sojin's face contorted with rage as he realized his prize was escaping. Their eyes met briefly through the viewport, and she saw something she had never expected: fear. Not of her specifically, but of what her defection represented, a crack in the absolute loyalty the Dominion demanded. 3, 2, 1, launch. The evacuation vessel's engines ignited with a thunderous roar, propelling them upward with crushing force. Carrie's expert piloting guided them through the automated launch sequence, breaking through Urkella's turbulent atmosphere into the star-speckled blackness of space beyond. Only when the blue-green curve of the planet receded beneath them did Carrie allow herself to exhale. Beside her, Reyes let out a low whistle of relief. "We made it," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Where to now?" It was a question Carrie had deliberately avoided considering until this moment. The enormity of what she had done, deserting the Dominion, aiding a human, stealing a military vessel, crashed over her like a wave. There was no going back. Not to her unit, not to her life before. I don't know, she admitted, the uncertainty unfamiliar and frightening. The Coalition wouldn't welcome a Vera defector and a genetic experiment with open arms, Reyes acknowledged. And I'm not exactly going to get a hero's welcome either, after helping you escape. We could find a neutral system, Ares suggested quietly from behind them. There are independent colonies in the outer reaches, places where the war hasn't reached. Carrie's fingers traced the edge of her bandage. Reyes' careful work still holding despite the combat and their desperate escape. Such a small thing, that act of kindness, yet had catalyzed something that now seemed inevitable in retrospect. What will we do there? She asked, voicing the doubt that plagued her. We're soldiers. That's all we know. We're more than what they made us to be, Reyes said with surprising gentleness. All of us. He glanced back at Ares, including them in his statement. Maybe it's time to find out exactly how much more. Carrie navigated the ship into a stealth trajectory, one that would make them difficult for Dominion vessels to track. The stars stretched before them, countless possibilities in their silent glittering. For the first time in her life, she felt the absence of orders as freedom rather than failure. Ares needs to be protected, she decided, finding purpose in that simple truth. What we discovered, what the Dominion was doing, others need to know. Perhaps that's where we start. Reyes nodded, his expression thoughtful. Truth has a way of changing things. Not immediately, not easily, but inevitably. In the relative safety of deep space, Carrie finally allowed herself to look at him properly. This human who had treated her wound when he could have taken her life, who had joined her cause when he could have abandoned them. The enemy who had become something else entirely. You should rest, he said, catching her examination. I can monitor our course for a while. I've picked up enough about Vera navigation systems to keep us from flying into a sun. The light attempt at humor drew a reluctant smile from Carrie. Wake me if anything changes, she instructed, rising from the pilot's seat. Her wound protested the movement, but less severely than before, already healing thanks to the Vera's natural regenerative abilities and Reyes' care. In the small rest area at the rear of the vessel, she found Ares already asleep, curled into a position that seemed vulnerable in its simplicity. Watching them, Carrie felt that unexpected protectiveness rise again. Was this how Reyes had felt, finding her wounded in that cave? This instinct to shield rather than harm? She settled onto the adjacent bunk, sleep claiming her almost immediately as her body demanded recovery. Her last conscious thought was not of the Dominion she had left behind, nor the uncertain future ahead, but the moment when Reyes had treated her wound. When, for the first time, she had been seen not as an enemy alien to be feared and destroyed, but as a being worthy of care. In the cockpit, Reyes watched the stars stream past, contemplating the strange turns that had brought him to this moment. Behind him, two beings who by all rights should have been his enemies slept peacefully, trusting him with their safety. Before him stretched a galaxy torn by a conflict that suddenly seemed less black and white than it had just days ago. He thought of Carrie's question, why they were fighting this war, and found his certainty wavering. How many other truths had been hidden from both sides? How many lies sustained the hatred between their species? The vessel's communication system remained silent, but Reyes knew it wouldn't last. Soon, both the Dominion and the Coalition would be hunting them. A Vera deserter, a human traitor, and a hybrid whose existence challenged the foundational narratives of the conflict. But for now, there was just this moment of peace, this small bubble of space where three individuals had chosen to see beyond the labels assigned to them. It wasn't much, perhaps, in the face of a galaxy-spanning war, but it was a beginning. Reyes settled back in his seat, eyes fixed on the navigation display as he plotted a course toward the distant edge of charted space. There would be challenges ahead, dangers and difficult choices. But for the first time since he'd been drafted into this war, he felt like he was fighting for something that mattered. Not an abstract cause or a faceless authority, but for the two beings sleeping behind him and for the possibility they represented. A possibility that had begun with a simple choice: to treat a wounded alien not as an enemy, but as someone who mattered.